That being said, we now move to 9A, long-term plan for Town's investment. I believe a motion to be moved by Councillor Swords. Would you like to formally move it?
I'd like to move that, Chair.
And formally seconded by Councillor Carter?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to second it.
And Councillor Carter, do you wish to speak after Councillor Swords or reserve your right to speak?
I'll reserve my rights.
Thank you. In which case, Councillor Swords, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your indulgence as you've just set out in bringing forward this urgent motion on what is one of the most important things that I think we could discuss this evening. As the Chamber will know, this Council has done a very good job of securing significant government investment into the regeneration of the town centre, which some of which indeed are listed in the motion, and that was only bolstered by the extra £20 million that was announced as part of the long-term plan for towns initiative in the budget in March, which indeed was welcomed on both sides of the Chamber, as all these investments have been. And you know, that funding has been different to previous funding pots. That is endowment style funding, in which it requires the council to work with the private sector, businesses, charities, faith groups, all parts of society in between, to truly maximise that benefit. So some council areas which received the first tranche of this funding last October have indeed managed to significantly multiply that with investment from the private sector, which is exactly our plan here too. And this will be at the heart of the safety and security, particularly of the new town centre, this funding specifically, and as I said, working indeed with the private sector to bring forward even further investment. So this is no criticism whatsoever of the agenda that the new government has set out, but what has been made clear by both the Chancellor and the Secretary of State is that this funding is under review. And indeed a number of councils of all political persuasions are now, of course, in a position where this funding is at risk. That's £20 million directly accounted for towards the regeneration of the town centre, which we all support, that's currently at risk. So this is of the utmost importance and urgency. It's been made very clear that this review will be conducted over the coming weeks, indeed, which is why it couldn't wait accordingly. So, as the motion makes clear, a number of councils up and down the country are bringing motions, writing letters, indeed the LGA, the District Councils Network, and many organisations in between are lobbying the government on this. And given the importance of this to the future of the town, I have great hope that all members of the Chamber indeed can support what is a practical motion that sets out very clearly some clear actions to effectively lobby the government on this, indeed writing directly to the Secretary of State and Chancellor, and indeed calling on the MP to raise this in Parliament, as it sets out, and to arrange an urgent meeting with the Chancellor and Secretary of State and representatives of the Council. So I think it's, you know, a very genuine and practical motion which all members will recognise the significant detrimental impact it would have on the future of the town if this funding did not come through. An enormous amount of work has been done, as you would expect, on all the other funding streams which we're now seeing being delivered, and indeed on what this funding would go towards, and I think it should be the utmost concern to us all that this funding is now at risk, and I would ask all members to support what is, as I said, a non-political, practical motion to indeed make clear to the government the feeling of this chamber that this funding is desperately needed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Swords. Are there any members that wish to enter into the debate? Councillor Durkin.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for allowing me to speak in opposition to this motion. Whilst I have great empathy and sympathy that actually we all want the same outcome, I find it offensive and arrogant in the tone and the wording that is used by the Tory party in relation to this matter. You have to remember, as Tories, you lost the election. And the reason why you lost the election was people did not trust you. And why did people not trust you? Because you told us that this money had already been secured and had already been in process of being given. We now know that is a falsehood. And that is why the vast majority of people turned away from the Tory party and went to Labour and to Reform. I find it particularly offensive in relation...
Can I stop you, Councillor Durkin? I've heard the words point of order, so I must immediately go to the person asking for the point of order. Councillor Swords, what is your point of order?
2 points, if I may, Chair, separate standing order items. But the first is a point of personal explanation, I believe. Indeed, that there is nothing in this motion, and there is nothing that I've said that vaguely relates to anything which the member is now falsely quoting me on.
So let's deal with that. That's a point of personal explanation where you believe that you may have been misunderstood in the earlier part of the debate. I accept your point of order and accept your clarification. Thank you. And secondly?
And the second, Chair, is, as I said, that my understanding is that members speaking in a debate on any motion are supposed to speak about the motion in front of them, not other things which are completely obscure to that.
They are, but please allow me to choose the latitude to which I allow Councillor Durkin and others to speak. So I'm going to turn that point of order down. Councillor Durkin, please proceed.
Yes, thank you for that particular issue. But actually, I find it offensive that you are demanding in one of your bullet points that the Harlow MP to arrange an urgent meeting. We have never done that to an MP of any political party where we made demands. We can request that the MP was, and we do know that we have got an excellent MP who will do everything he possibly can to deliver what our expectations are and more. But to actually use this type of language at this particular time is not beneficial or helpful to enable meaningful consultation and discussion to take place. We were told by video at the local election that if you won the local election, the next day regeneration would commence in the town centre, and it didn't. We were also
told... Point of personal explanation, Chair.
Okay, I'll take one more point of personal explanation.
So, as is on record from this council, not from a political party, that there was a promise, which has been wrongly quoted, that the regeneration would start within days. Indeed, on the Tuesday following the election, given the Monday was a bank holiday, work started, as this council reported. So, yet again, something that I'm being wrongly quoted on, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Swords. Councillor Durkin, please, I have to say I have to accept that point of personal explanation. Please continue.
With respect, you can take what you want, and I can understand that and appreciate it, but it doesn't mean to say that what I'm saying isn't actually why people voted against you, because of the trust and the values that you said that couldn't be delivered. But it is actually factually correct. That is what was actually said, and actually all you actually did, which is correct, which has been planned for 3 to 4 years anyway, was actually the knocking down of the bridge to Terminus House. We were also told, by the way, that if they vote for us, we would get a Marks and Spencer's department store, and we're still waiting for that. I'm happy to work with anybody to enable us to achieve our mutual ambitions over this, but I will not support this as the shadow portfolio holder for regeneration because of the wording of this, and in my humble opinion, it could be viewed as intimidating up to the point of bullying. But that is my personal observation, and on that I'll conclude.
Thank you, Councillor Durkin. Any other speakers? Councillor Ellis.
I'm sorry that Councillor Durkin feels this is a party political matter and takes such personal offence from it, but I wholeheartedly support the motion in the names of Councillor Swords and Councillor Carter, and the comments that he has made about the importance of this funding on the regeneration of our town. These are precisely the moments, whether Councillor Durkin likes it or not, that we need our MP to step up and fight for us. And I would urge Councillor Vince to do so in the strongest possible terms, but he should have our full support in doing that.
So can I have a point of clarification as to my speech?
You can indeed, Councillor Durkin, if you believe you've been misunderstood.
Can I just clarify, Chair? I have never said, in fact, if the councillor had bothered to listen, I did actually say that our MP would be absolutely doing everything they possibly can to do this. But actually the wording is that you are demanding him to do something. He's been in office 2 weeks. Right. Let him get the chance. Let him get him out. Sorry, can I not be interrupted?
Can I interrupt all of you? So, Councillor Durkin, I understand your point of order. I wish you would not express yourself in some of the terms that you're using. I would ask us all to be ladies and gentlemen in this chamber and talk to each other with proper language rather than assuming that people are making a mistake or may have misheard. However, let me read what it says in this motion and give you my view. Therefore, this council calls on Harlow's MP, doesn't demand, it calls on the MP to do something which is totally compatible with motions that I moved when I was leader of the council and you moved when you were leader of the council. I'll draw a line under that there. Any other speaker? Councillor Ellis, do you want to continue?
I would love to finish, thank you.
Please do so.
Having worked for the former MP, I know he worked very closely with this council when it was run by the party opposite and was happy to do so on matters that are important to the town. And I hope this is a matter that the group opposite can reconsider supporting, because this shouldn't be about party politics. This should be about putting Harlow first and Harlow above the interests of their party and doing what's best for our town. And that is all that this motion seeks to do. I very much think we should stand together on this and not allow the phenomenal work of this council and our former MP, Robert Halfon, to be undone.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Anyone else wishing to contribute to the debate? Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to pick up some of the points on the wording. I'm not going to get too bogged down in this. I've been looking down on the long-term plan for towns because that's what this motion's angling at. And obviously, Harlow wasn't part of the Trench 1, it was part of Trench 2, which came after the spring budget. This was come from the published on the 28th of March 2024, following the spring budget. Around this, Harlow was part of that, the 20 extra towns. Trench 1 was the only two in the east of England, was Clacton and Great Yarmouth. Harlow come secondary to that. Now, bullet point in this, if anybody's, it's on page 3. It says, for the additional 20 towns announced to the spring budget, which is Harlow, they will have up to the 1st of June to set up their town boards. The £50,000 capacity funding to support that work will be released in April. And then if you move on to page number 4, which says, for the additional 20 towns that we announced at the budget, by the 1st of January, expect the chair to be appointed to the town boards, etc. I'm not going to cover that ground again. By the 1st of November 2024, we expect the Department for Levelling Up, which has now changed its name, to have released the next £200,000 of capacity funding to support the development of a long-term plan, including additional community engagement activities, and town boards to support their long-term plans, compromising a 10-year vision and 3-year investment plan. The plan will set how the funding will be allocated and spent. So we're asking for something that hasn't got there. The funding will not be coming forward till November. We've already had the first one in April, which is when the new town boards are set up. That's quite clearly written down. Either that's been given or not. I'm sure Dan's shaking his head at me. I'm sure he will pick me up on it, etc., etc. But the first part is June. We need to set up the town board. The money should have been there to do that. Move towards that, and then by the 1st of November, that's what it's written here, Dan, page 4. Oh, apology, Councillor Swartz. Release the next 200,000. So we're asking for something, but we're not quite there yet, and I will leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Shepherd.
Thank you. Just to follow on with Councillor Howard, to just add some broader context to this debate. Yesterday I had the pleasure of joining the LGA's new councillor event online and met councillors from all political hues across the country. And just to reassure members here tonight, there was no mass panic or worry about the incoming government. In fact, we didn't talk much about the government at all. But what I will say is that, local government across the country is looking eagerly to what the government will bring in. Let's let the government get on with its work rather than pester with motions such as this.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Perrin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm equally amazed at some of the comments I've heard here tonight. Effectively, what we're asking for is just to make sure that this council draws a line in the sand, puts a marker down and says to the government, please don't forget us. And what we've heard tonight is people saying, well, what we'll do is we'll just wait and see what happens. We'll just wait to be surprised so that when they come back later on in the year, and if we happen to not be part of this funding and they withdraw the 20 million, then we can go, oh dear, never mind. It is not unreasonable or offensive to make sure that what we've been asking for and what's been promised is continued to be delivered. Is there anyone in this room that does not want the town centre to be regenerated? Is there anyone in this room that thinks it's offensive to make sure that the money that's been promised to regenerate the town centre shouldn't happen, shouldn't come to us. Is there anyone in here that finds that's offensive? Does anyone find the phrase, the council will work constructively with the new government to ensure we secure this funding for the benefit of Harlow? Is that offensive? I don't think it's offensive. I don't think it's offensive at all. What's offensive is that we saw this town slide into decay over decades because people dithered away our advantages. People consistently said, mañana, mañana. We'll wait to see what happens. We'll wait to see. And it was under your leadership. I cannot believe I'm hearing a shadow regeneration portfolio holder say that it's offensive to make sure that we just ask the government to think of us when they're looking at this round, because the Chancellor has said that this is under review. I cannot believe I've just heard that. That's cross-party support for regeneration. It's built on very thin ice as far as I can see. I'll be supporting the motion because I want the town to be regenerated. And if they're going to give us the money, great. But if they don't, we'll remember this, that you haven't tried as hard as you could to make sure that they give us the money that has been promised.
Thank you, Councillor Perrin. Any other speakers? Councillor Leppard?
Thank you, Chair. I do lament that this has been distorted away from what should be a cross-party motion for the benefit of this town. These funds have been promised to us. It is in the interest of all of us that we ensure that we receive them. And the motion is merely, as Councillor Perrin said, a reaffirmation of what has been promised already. I actually give credit to the current Prime Minister for the mantra of his election campaign when he said, country first, party second. We in this chamber should do the same. Town first, party second. This is not a party political issue. We should all support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leppard. Councillor Edwards.
I think you're putting up an Aunt Sally, basically. What you say is, however, notes that the 20 million long-term plan for the town investment appears at risk in the light of the comments of the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the Secretary of State. What you then don't do, and what you don't do rather, is you don't give any evidence as what those comments are. Why does it appear at risk? What particular... There's nothing in here where you're saying, in light of these comments, the comments being this, this, this and this. You've not laid that out at all. Basically, what you're being is very political. Mm-hmm. You're putting up a false Aunt Sally. You're then saying, if you don't support us, you're not supporting the town, which is absolute nonsense, and you know it. So therefore, rather than the approach that you appear, and there's nothing to stop Councillor Swords, if he wishes, writing to the MP, writing to the Secretary of State, writing to whoever he likes. There's nothing to stop him. He doesn't need to come here to ask our permission or to give our backing to a letter that he wants to write. If he wants to write a letter, he can write a letter. But what you've done is, as I say, you're setting up a false Aunt Sally in somehow or other to say, if we turn this down, we are not supporting the town. Couldn't be more removed from the truth. So I would suggest that we actually vote against this and knock it down. If it subsequently comes, if there appears to be an issue, or if there is an issue, if that issue emerges, then we will deal with that as and when it emerges. But at the moment, there is no issue there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Kay Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. So far, I haven't found any convincing evidence to justify the words at risk. I really haven't. I've tried, I really haven't. This looks like posturing. Sorry, guys, but it does. It may even seem a little hysterical. I would expect the leader of the council to have regular meetings with our MP. That's what council leaders do. You don't need a motion to help you to do that. It's part of your job, and we expect you to do your job. work with our MP in a respectful fashion for the benefit and to the benefit of Harlow people of our town. Just do your job. That's all I ask of you.
Yes, what's your question?
I just wondered if the legal officer would be able to tell us when the Secretary of State says they're going to review something, does it mean that they're wasting their time and that they will...
Councillor
I
Perrin,
just wonder if a review in the legal sense means nothing's going to change, or whether review means there's a possible change.
I don't think it's appropriate to ask the legal officer of Harlow Council to take a view on the Secretary of State, but I do appreciate your point. There being no other speakers showing, I'll go to Councillor David Carter, who seconded the motion.
Thank you, Chair. What I would like to say on this is that in the motion it says this concern is shared by councils of all political colours and has been raised by the District Councils Network. So it's not Harlow, it's all councils of all political colours. So it's a concern. And I would have thought that the best way forward is for this motion to go forward with the full support of all of us. That's probably the only way, or one of the only ways, that we are going to be a committed council. If we're going to not be a joined-up council at this matter, then it lays down what's going to happen in the future, that whatever comes up, there's going to be those people who, no matter what it is, will vote against it. And that is political. This is not political. This is actually down here that all district councils are worried about what's going to happen. So I would think that a lot of councils will send a letter like this in the same way, and that will actually get the departments concerned to actually think seriously about it. If nobody writes, they'll just get on and do what they want. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. I'm not seeing any other hands, in which case I'll hand over to the Leader of the Council to sum up the debate, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I think it's valuable to hear contributions from both sides of the Chamber on this. Just to respond to a few of the points directly. So we started by hearing that we had led residents up the garden path, or an Aunt Sally to quote another, by saying that such funds have been committed, but we were told that that wasn't true, only to be followed by the next speaker, who indeed read out the guidance, which is version 1. If you look at version 2, it's since been updated, that sets out that we do. So even between a shadow portfolio holder and their whip, they cannot quite agree the party line. I'm quite happy to send Councillor Edwards the comments both of the Chancellor and the Secretary of State that refer to such a thing. I thought that a councillor in his position would be hanging off their every word about their new announcements at the moment, but evidently not. I understand if some members think that we're wrong to bring this forward, and I understand indeed that they may disagree with us, but I just would pose the question to them, if we are so wrong, why are the LGA campaigning on it? Why are the District Councils Network campaigning on it? Why has the chairman of the District Councils Network written to the Secretary of State about such a matter, expressing such concern? Why at the District Councils Network exec board meeting last week was this a topic of discussion? Why indeed have Labour councils written to the government about this? And indeed I'm happy to share those letters too. I'm surprised, of course, I've just been accused of not doing my job. I would indeed note that there is a certain councillor who I would guess is not doing their job by not being in the chamber when they're supposed to, namely our new MP. So I take no lessons on how to do my own. But more pertinent to the point, of course, we've got a shadow portfolio holder who evidently has not engaged with the officers of this council about the status of this funding. If they had, they would understand that there is great concern, because it is a very real thing. But evidently, indeed, not one member of the opposition has spoken to the officers of this council. If they had, they would fully appreciate the very real concern. Indeed, the meetings that we continue to have on a near weekly basis with the department, evidently none of them know about that. I would suggest that's a shadow portfolio holder not doing their job when nearly a fifth of the funding that has been allocated to us is now under review. Whether you think that means at risk or not, that funding is under review. In my mind, as Councillor Perrin said quite eloquently, that suggests that something may change. If that something that changes means that this town does not get that funding which it so desperately needs, I may suggest that this was the day that cross-party support for regeneration of the town centre died. Indeed, if Councillor Durkin was so concerned about the wording but supported the premise of the motion, he could, of course, table an amendment to the wording. But evidently, it's absolutely nothing to do with the wording of this motion. It's simply that I can only presume there is opposition to the requirement for this funding. I genuinely, there is not one political word in this. I don't think it's offensive to call on our MP to arrange a meeting or to raise this in the House of Commons. Indeed, that's what their job is, as Councillor Morrison said. So I truly am aghast that we could not write a cross-party letter to the Secretary of State that makes very clear that all members of the Chamber on both sides are concerned about an issue. I was asked last week by Councillor Edwards how this council could lobby the government about funding of which it had been promised. I set these things out. He now wishes to vote against them. So I don't think many people in the public will presume, as I said, there is not politics in this, but I don't think many people listening to the opposition, if a funding stream is under review and this council wishes to write and ask the MP to lobby on our behalf and they vote against that, I don't think many people would deduce from that they are in support of the funding coming. So I genuinely am quite astonished that there can't be support. I think, without speaking on their behalf and with your indulgence, Chair, I think the people that work on this every single day will be nothing but upset that the people in this chamber do not recognise the work they are doing and have not a clue about what is going on, as we have simply heard. So I make one last plea that all members support a motion that mentions no politics whatsoever, that simply references and calls upon, as they suggested, this action is pointless. If it's so pointless, why on earth would they vote against it? To ask the government to deliver the funding that this town so desperately needs.
Thank you, Councillor Swords. That concludes the debate. We'll move to the vote. All those in favour of the motion?
Chair, in line with the standing orders, could I call a named vote, please?
You would need members standing in their place with you to do that. And you have enough members to call a named vote, in which case I need to hand over to the monitoring officer for the vote.
Good evening, councillors. I'll be calling on you one by one. I'd ask that you clearly indicate whether you are for, against or you abstain. Thank you. Councillor Danielle Brown. Thank you. Councillor David Carter. For. Councillor Joel Charles. For. Councillor Jodie Dunn.
Against.
Councillor Tony Durkin. Thank you. Councillor Tony Edwards. Councillor Hannah Ennis. Councillor Mike Garnett. Councillor Emma Kafari. Councillor James Griggs. Councillor Alistair Gunn. Councillor Michael Hardware. Councillor Michael Houlihan. Councillor Luke Howard. Councillor Maggie Holcoop. Councillor Andrew Johnson.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor James Leopard. Councillor Sue Livings. Councillor Kay Morrison. Councillor Aidan O'Dell. Councillor Russell Perrin. Councillor Daniela Pritchard. Thank you. Councillor Nikki Purse. Councillor Matthew Saggers. Councillor Stacey Seals. Councillor Lainey Shears. Councillor Jake Shepherd.
Against.
Councillor Clive Souter. Councillor Dan Swords. Councillor Nancy Watson. Thank you. That's it. Thank you, councillors.
Okay, the results of that are 16-13 with one abstention, which means the motion is carried. We move to item 10, the main